All right, so here's the story. We're in the book of Judges, chapter 6, 7, and there's the Jezreel Valley over there. I'm right at the edge of this hill. There's a big valley, beautiful valley. It has lots of barley and wheat. It's very productive because it has a water source. It was an east-west trade route back in the day. There's no king in the land. Every man did as he saw fit in the book of Judges. People are doing what they're doing. They're forgetting the fact that God called them out of Egypt, and they're doing whatever they thought was right. And that's our biggest mistake, of course. We don't do what God calls us to do. We say, I'm going to be in charge, and that's the biggest mistake. We should be Israel, governed by God. And that should be our goal in life. Going and doing it our way only ends up in misery, only ends up in trouble. And that was their problem. And so Gideon, he lives around the corner from here, not too far away. The Amalekites, the people from the east, they cross the Jordan River and they come over here. If you take a look, you can see our group over there. But if you look over here, this is the Valley of Jezreel. Down over there to the left is the Mount of Moreh. That's where they were camped. And so we're in the exact spot, not the traditional site, the theoretical site. This is it. And so God tells Gideon, hey, mighty warrior, I want you to come and I want you to lead my army. I've heard your prayers and we're going to answer and we're going to respond. And so he gathers over 30,000 people to fight against them. They're still freaked out because it says their camels were as the sands of the sea, without number. It was a ton of people. They're shaking in their boots even though there's 30,000 people on this mountain. So God says, come down here, and I want you to select the people, and those that go to the spring and drink the water, cupping, tell them to take off. Those that get down and stick their face in the water and drink. And so after they sent 20,000 people away, they separate the rest of them that were there, and there was only 300 people left over. And so he takes those 300 people, God says, I'm going to do something mighty on your behalf. And if I were the 300, I'd be shaking in my boots because I'm looking at a vast, militarily superior army. How is this going to work out? I'm toast. And God works with our faith. There's a number of different things that he does to encourage Gideon. He gives him a fleece. It's wet one day and dry the next. And there's things that he does to encourage him. He goes to the Midianite camp at night. He hears them, and the guy had a dream. And the point is that God can use people who have very little faith. And sometimes I think we have very little faith, and God still uses that situation. But he wants to use that situation. As we take steps of faith, Gideon began to lead his people. He took down the altar of Baal, the Asherah pole. Really what he's saying is he's starting to lead his people, starting to follow God. He takes steps of faith, and God uses them even more mightily in those circumstances. But God is always looking. His eyes are going back and forth, looking on behalf of whose people he can act mightily. And so when you're going through difficult times, one, remember that God sometimes does these things to encourage us, and the answer is just to take a step of faith towards listening, even if it's a small step. And then he encourages us with something else to take another step of faith, and he's on his way to do something mighty on your behalf. And that's the story of Joshua chapter 7, that God's still working. If God be for us, who can be against us? The answer, of course, in Romans 8, Paul's asking a rhetorical question, is no one. Because God, with one, we can send 1,000 to rout. And it's not our ability, but it's because God is acting on our behalf.